Hey everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with the Saturday edition of Today in Sports Betting. As always, I am joined by my co-host partner in crime. He is the one, the only. He is Scott Reichel, all the way from Long Island, New York. Scott, how are you today?
Doing pretty well. Happy that it's Saturday. I know that I missed out because I was sleeping on the early morning restart of German soccer. So I missed out on that opportunity. I know that there were a bunch of matches today. Seemed to all be pretty high scoring. I know Twitter was all over Borussia Dortmund, and they ended up winning by 4 goals or so. But I've never really been that big of a soccer bettor. I've dabbled a little bit, so I have had some experience in the past. But I would not be surprised to see a ton of people who normally don't bet soccer start to bet soccer because of the lack of, options in the marketplace.
Yeah. So it's really weird. The dates and the time of the month really has gotten away from me because we were talking yesterday. We were talking about Bundesliga starting back up. Oh, that's going to start in the middle of May. Like, well, that'll be something to look forward to. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, by the way, it's May 15th already, and it's starting tomorrow. So, sorry you were Bundes snoozing.
Oh, I have no regrets. I probably wouldn't have bet anything anyway. I thought about putting Borussia maybe into a 2-pick money line parlay.
Who didn't?
I did, but I didn't do it. I thought better of it, whatever. Turns out I thought worse of it because they won 4-0. So,
that probably would have been a good play.
But, well, everything's a good play when you already know the result. So, you can keep that in mind for you sharp bettors at home. But,
that should be a bumper sticker right there.
Yeah, in terms of German soccer, I used to be a lot more involved with it when I used to play the video game soccer stuff with FIFA when I was in high school or so. Haven't really played that in a while, so I kind of fell out a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe I might start looking back into soccer every now and then. We'll see. Potentially in the future, but it's good to know that the one lean that I actually had this morning turned out to be a good one. So maybe that's a good sign of things to come.
Well, it's no Korean baseball, but you take what you can get. So,
have you put any bets recently in there, or you retired after winning your first Korean baseball?
I actually hit another one on yesterday. I keep wanting to say Thursday night, but it was actually the Friday game. So.
Did you take the Dinos again?
No, I had a total that I hit. So
okay, nice.
Pretty excited. I'm stretching out, buddy. I'm on an unstoppable winning streak right now of 2 in a row. So.
I'm still 0-0, so I'm waiting it out.
Still 500. Scott, yesterday we had Joe on. It was a great show. We talked about all the various leagues getting reopened and everything. We kind of left out one, and we're going to make up for that today. We left out our boys down there in the turn left circuit as NASCAR had announced plans a few weeks earlier to get rolling here again in the middle of May. And they're going to do that. They're getting back to it tomorrow at Darlington. So we thought we'd do a little show and talk a little motorsports. Are you excited? Are you let's say revved up for this show?
Well, believe it or not, I actually used to be a very big fan of NASCAR growing up. I used to collect a couple or almost all of the action figure miniature cars that used to go into the random.
We had those.
I had a lot of them. I used to watch the races all the time. I was always a Jeff Gordon guy and Jimmy Johnson, mostly just with Hendrick Motorsports. But a lot has changed since then. A lot of racers that I grew up watching are no longer in the circuit. Jimmy Johnson's still around, but he's pretty much clinging at this point as he hasn't been that relevant in a while. But he's one of the greatest racers of all time. Jeff Gordon retired. Dale Earnhardt Jr. retired, and you have a couple people here and there, but for the most part, definitely not as much star power as I remember growing up.
Yeah, and see, I think we were into it. My son was into it, and you're the exact same age as my son, so obviously we grew up. We're looking at the same racers. He was a Tony Stewart guy, all the Joe Gibbs Racing, driving that 20 orange Home Depot car.
The Home Depot, yeah, of course.
But yeah, all the Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Dale Jarrett,
yeah,
the Labonis, Bobby Labonte, Terry Labonte, Michael Waltrip, Dick Waltrip, all those guys are gone, except for, like I said, with Jimmy Johnson, 7-time champion, and he is just a shadow of his former self. And I got to be honest, Scott, I looked through the racers for this race, and there was you can start getting towards the bottom there. there's probably 15 guys I didn't know, and I thought I kept up okay. I knew about, I knew about Eric Jones. I knew about some of the Bubba Wallace. I knew about some of the new guys coming up, but there was a guys on there I'd never heard of. So before you listen to us do our show today, take that caveat that this is a sport that we've kind of let go, and we did kind of a crash course last night sneaking up. Now, we do have one of our writers that wrote a very nice piece on Darlington over there at Winners and Winers. His name is Chris Kubala. Now, he did write it before the draw for the starting lineup, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So take that with a grain of salt. But it is a nice write-up on some of the racers over there. So check out that at winnersandwiners.com, as well as all of our great material over there at winnersandwiners.com. So without further ado, let's take a look at this race. This is a kind of a weird situation with NASCAR. They are going to run 7 races in 11 days. 4 of those will be Cup races. They're going to run Darlington tomorrow on Sunday, and then they'll run it again on Wednesday. They'll move on to Charlotte, where they will run the Charlotte, I believe, the Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday, and then run another race on Wednesday there as well. So this is the first time that they've run Darlington since in the spring since 2014. This is the Heroes 400 at Darlington Sunday afternoon. I guess the Southern 500 will be Wednesday. And this is the first time that they have been on the track for real since March 8th. They're in Phoenix as they opened with 4 races and then had to shut it down. And this will be the first time that Kyle Larson will not be joining us, as he had an incident when he was virtual racing. And then Chip Ganassi Racing, to their credit, they cut ties with him immediately. And he was 7th in points, a real up-and-coming racer, cost himself millions of dollars with one slip of the tongue. You dropping an N-bomb. Can't do it in this day and age, my friend. Even if you're just joking around with your buddies, there are some things that are absolutely off limits, and that is one of them. So we'll be moving on without Kyle Larson, at least for now. This is an interesting racetrack, Scott. They've been open since 1950. It's called the Lady in Black, the track too tough to tame, et cetera, et cetera. What I like about this best, and we always were fascinated by this watching this race, it's not a true oval. It's an egg shape. And do you know why? Do you know why it's not a true oval, Scott? Do you know this little piece of trivia?
I actually do not.
Okay, so when they were building the track, the guy who owned the land had a minnow pond where he went and got his minnows that was at the behind turn 3 and turn 4. So in order to not disturb his minnow pond, they had to shorten the chute on 3 and 4, and that's why it's the weird shape that it is. It's 1.366 miles in length, so 400 miles equates out to 298 laps. So yeah, there you go. Little.
I'm sorry, I did not know that. I'm sorry, I was not aware of the minnow pond backstory on that.
It always stuck in my head, and I could never remember if it was Darlington or Martinsville. So when I started reading about the race, I'm like, yep, that's the minnow pond race. Huh. So yeah, it's really hard coming out of turn 4 there, because it's a little bit of a short turn there. So you'll see a lot of they call it their Darlington stripes, as the right rear quarter panel will tend to brush against the wall coming out of that chute. Scott, did you ever do any kind of driving, any kind of race driving for fun, or anything like that?
No, but I've seen about 6 of the Fast and Furious movies, if that counts.
It does not.
Okay, well then, unfortunately, my career racing track never really got started. Besides owning a NASCAR video game growing up, that was pretty much the peak of my professional racing career.
We had a NASCAR game as well. I can't imagine, sitting in traffic. If you ever drive rush hour or anything, and you're about 2 feet from the car in front of you, you're going 20 miles an hour, and you feel nervous in case the guy hits the brakes.
I think 20 is a little bit optimistic there. Usually you're going around 2. But
I'm talking about when traffic starts to open up or whatever, Yeah. But if you can imagine going, 200 miles an hour at that speed, or coming out of a turn where you just brush the wall, just kiss the wall.
Well, you can control a lot of aspects, but one thing you can never control when you're driving are other drivers, and I feel like that's definitely the case as well even with professionals when you're going at triple-digit speeds. So there's always the possibility of serious accidents happening in any of these races, not just talking about driving in general. But speaking of which, it actually is good to see Ryan Newman back, and he will be racing on Sunday after that horrific incident he had earlier this season in which there were rumors that his life was potentially at stake. So it is good to see him healthy once again and back racing, doing what he loves.
Incredible. It's unbelievable that, that he was able to return that quickly after that horrific crash at Daytona.
Everyone immediately thought of the incident with regard to Dale Earnhardt Sr., and I still remember that incident because that was actually the first professional NASCAR race I ever watched, and I saw him crash face first into turn 4. So that was actually the first NASCAR race I ever watched, and Dale Earnhardt Sr. passed away. So I feel like everybody now, whether or not they should be comparing anything to that tragedy or not, anytime you see a serious incident, it pretty much always gets compared to Dale Earnhardt Sr. And I feel like anytime some driver is not only fully healthy, but healthy enough to actually return, it's definitely just a good sign. And I hope that Ryan Newman doesn't have to experience that in the future.
Yeah, and it really is a testament to what they've done with these cars as far as the safety goes. Obviously, you're never going to be 100% safe, but horrific crash there involving Ryan Newman. So we wish him the best, and we're going on with the season. Now, the way they did the starting grid for this, it was kind of they broke it down into 1 through 12, 13 through 24, 25 through 36. The 1 through 12, they had a random draw.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the same thing with the other 3 spots, obviously. And they then will reverse the order of finish for the Wednesday race, also at Darlington. And they're going to, in other words, if you finish first, you're going to start 12th. Second, you're going to start 11th, etc. So Brad Keselowski sits on the pole for this one, and it should be kind of an interesting thing as we get to see the top 12 there as they go at it. And I'm looking to see where Newman is starting. Newman is starting 21st.
Yeah, I don't think he's a real threat to win the race, so to speak, from where he's starting. It's just a win automatically to see him back out there.
Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. So I'm going to start. We're going to take a look at both win odds, and we're going to take a look at matchups, because I know that matchups have become very big on the NASCAR betting circuit right now. They love to bet those matchups. So we're going to take a look at matchups as well as a couple of long odds to win. So let's get started here. The first one I like is kind of one of those grizzled veterans, Scott. In fact, he was the guy that took over the Dale Earnhardt car after his tragic passing away. He drove the 29 car, and that is Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick comes into this race plus 700, and Kevin, well, it kind of been back to the future here this season for him. He leads in points. He's starting 6th on the starting lineup, and he has had some success at this track. He's finished in the top 10, 12 of his 23 races. He won from the pole there in 2014, and by the way, that was the last spring race. And he does have a couple of second-place finishes and a third-place finish on the books. Scott, what do you think about a little blast from the past here? You like my Kevin Harvick getting a decent price on him at 7-1?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is some value there. I actually looked at a bet boost on Fox, but that I do like a little bit more, which ties into one of the people I was going to get in a little while. But Harvick, he's been phenomenal. Age is definitely not caught up to him. He appears to be in the middle of his, I'd say, NASCAR dominance, so to speak, as originally he was a solid racer, but I'd say he was mostly a little bit under the radar when Jimmy Johnson was, his reign was just unstoppable for the most part. And Harvick was always a top 10 racer, but I'd say probably towards the back end of the top 10. And now it appears that he might be the best racer in the entire circuit at this point. He is number 1 in points. He's not first in the standings, though, because they do some weird thing now with the wins. So I believe Harvick might be 2nd or 3rd overall. But in
Right.
terms of general points, I believe he is first. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to go about explaining which prop I like because of the fact that it's kind of a combo deal. But I originally had Kyle Busch circled here at plus 550 on Fox Bet. But I actually noticed there is one prop I like more than just Kyle Busch straight up. And it is a combo prop on Fox Bet, which has either Kevin Harvick or Kyle Busch winning the race at plus 400. So you get two racers at plus 400 when Busch was plus 550 to start with and Harvick was roughly plus 700 to start with. So for me, I think that's definitely a good deal if you're going to be getting two veteran racers who know their way around the track and they're both also starting in the top six. So I feel like that's a pretty good way to look at it. Harvick's been really good. You don't have to worry about him potentially catching up at any point during the race because he will be starting at towards the front at least. And yeah, I think Harvick or Kyle Busch, any of those two would be a very solid play. And I don't know what you think, but I think getting both of them and only paying roughly $2 of juice, but getting an extra racer attached to it is probably worth it. So Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick at plus 400 on Fox Bet definitely is a way that I plan on looking for this race.
I like that. I like that. It's like going to a horse race and getting 1 and 1A. Except instead of a couple of bad horses, you're getting two of the top premier racers in the race. Yeah, I think that's a good price. It kind of mitigates any kind of danger that you might have for one of these guys getting caught up in a bad incident or something like this. And this is a race that position is really everything. It's very important to start towards the front. In fact, only 6 times in the 116 Cup races that have been held at Darlington has the winner come from outside of the 15th position. So, in other words, if you ain't 1 through 15, you could be in a world of hurt. It is a track that lends itself to a lot of passing. It's narrow, short, and it's something where position is paramount there at the racetrack. And Kyle Busch, it is just tough. It is tough to bet against Joe Gibbs cars when it comes to this track. JGR. Joe Gibbs Racing has really fielded some fantastic racers. Not just Kyle Busch, but Denny Hamlin, Eric Jones won their last time they were here. Martin Truex Jr. They've got 5. They got 5 wins overall between the 4 of them. And Joe Gibbs Racers have won 4 of the last 7 Cup races. And Kyle Busch, for my money, there really isn't a better racer right now. I like. I stayed away from him as far as my picks goes, but it's always a good thing to have Kyle Busch, especially at this race at Darlington.
Well, because
now, I'm going to take.
I was going to say, I think the reason why you stayed away from him is because of the fact that since he is, for the most part, the prohibitive favorite at roughly plus 600 or less, there's not really much value on him. But I think if you end up doing that pair prop with him and Harvick together, yes, you are going to be losing about $2. But at the end of the day, you get 2 premier racers instead of 1, and any accident could happen at any time, and you aren't completely screwed if one of the 2 goes down. Of course, your odds get dropped in half because you used to have 2 chances of winning, now you have 1. But I think we can agree that Harvick and Busch, barring any accident, especially with all the statistics that you just listed, with how racers typically win the race at this track when they start off in the top 15, both of them are in the top 6. So I feel like you are getting a decent price there for 2 premier racers at this point in time.
Yeah, arguably what should be the 2 favorites in that race, if not certainly 2 of the top 3. I like that play very much. What else you got?
So going into some of the other props here, I'm going to stick to outrights though. I did mention Eric Jones in just the notes that I prepared because it is worth mentioning that he did win the race last year and he is plus 1,700. However, if you are aware of the starting positions or if you're not aware, Eric Jones is starting 20th, which means he's starting outside that 15th spot, and I'm a little bit skeptical of how likely it is for him to win back-to-back times at this track. I don't see that happening, so I would personally just toss Jones out for this one. I mean, if you want the value there at plus 1,700, you can go for it, but starting 20th isn't exactly prime starting position for this track. So I'm personally not going to be playing him. If I am going to be looking at another person for this race, though, in terms of value, I actually like Joey Logano. And his line is currently at plus 900 on Fox Bet. It is worth mentioning that even though Harvick has more points, Logano is actually in first place in the standings because he has 2 wins. And he also won a duel. So he actually has a lot of success so far in the season. Now, you have to wonder if any of the layoff is going to hurt him because he was doing so well in the live cup races before everything turned digital for about a month or so. But Logano is starting 9th, so he's starting off pretty well in this track. And it's really tough to go against the guy in first place when you're getting plus 900 odds there. Now, the reason why he is currently at plus 900 is because of the fact that, historically speaking, he has not had the most success at Darlington. So people might think that he will struggle because he hasn't had that much success at Darlington in the past. But if I told you you could get the person in first place in the standings who has won, I'd say 2.5 races, because I'll count the duel as pretty much half a race, you can get him and he starts in the top 10 at plus 900. I would probably take a flyer on that. So for me, I'm going to look at Logano at plus 900.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just I like Joey Logano. I don't like him as well on short tracks.
Mm-hmm.
He is kind of the master at the mile and a half and above. I know that they had the duel there in Daytona. I know he did well. Where does he win? He had a win in Vegas, right?
He had a win in Vegas, a win in Daytona, and he had a win in the duel in another track. So I don't know. I don't really know what a duel is, if I'm being honest.
Daytona is they set the starting lineup in Daytona with the 2 duel races.
Okay.
They race on Thursday. They split the field into roughly in half, and then that's how they do the qualifying. So
that was the main reason why Logano's odds are that large, is because of the fact that he has had more experience on some tracks as opposed to others, and this is one of the others. But plus 900, I feel like that's still a little bit too just high based on the quality of racer that Logano is.
Right.
So I think if you want to take a flyer there, I think it's probably worth maybe a sprinkle. I know what you think about that.
I don't hate it. He is a high quality racer. It's hard to argue against Joey Logano. I don't mind that. That's a nice price. And Scott, I'm going to play the sucker bet, and I know all the reasons that you so eloquently stated not to bet on him. Having said that, I'm going to take a 16-1 flyer on Erik Jones. He's really driving that number 20 Toyota very well. He did win the last race here. The thing working against him there, he does start in the 20th spot. Traditionally, out of the top 15, as we talked about, that is a death knell. But it's not like he's buried in the field. He's not, back in the 30s. I think the starting 20th on the grid there, I think he can overcome that over the 298 laps. And I like this kid. This kid is a race car driver. I do like Erik Jones in this spot. He's finished well in all of his races at Darlington. He's never finished outside of the top 10. His average finish position is 4.67. That is 5 career starts, 3 in the Cup, 2 in Xfinity. And by the way, that is the top mark of all drivers in history with more than 2 starts. So I'm going to play the sucker bet. I'm going to play the long shot, and hopefully he won't get caught up in all of the shenanigans back there in the middle of the pack until he gets towards the front. Give me Erik Jones in that 20 car, the old Tony Stewart ride before he went off and formed his own company.
Yeah, I'm just going to say we're on the same page here, but not to the same degree. You like Jones as a flyer, and one of the plays that I thought was one of the safer plays on the board, you can get Jones to finish in the top 10 at minus 137. I know that there's a decent amount of juice on that, which you kind of just stole my statistics that I was going to use for mentioning my case. So thank you. But Jones has never finished 11th or worse at this track in his career, I believe, which you just said. So you can get him at minus 137. Now, you can make the argument, well, you still have to bank on him jumping roughly 10 spots. Are you concerned by that? And the answer I have is no. If you look at a decent amount of the racers that are in front of him, I don't really think on this track there are many that are superior than him on this track. I mean, you're looking at the likes of Clint Boyer, Chase Elliott, Cole Custer, Martin Truex Jr. Or Truex Jr. is okay, but you have Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, William Byron. There are a couple, Corey LaJoie. I mean, you got a couple of people here who you can make the argument maybe they could potentially put together a dark horse candidate type of run here. But for the most part, the odds of Jones surpassing, I'd say, pretty much all the racers I just listed are pretty high, in my opinion, on this track. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Jones finish somewhere in the realm of 5th or 6th maybe, which is why I think that plus 1,700 is a little bit of a sucker bet, because at the end of the day, he's going to have to pass premium racers at the front when he's going to be starting with a significant disadvantage, because he's going to have to make up the gap between them over a long period of time. But minus 137 might sound like a decent amount of juice there. For a guy who's never finished 11th or worse on this track, I feel like that's a pretty good play. So for me, I would personally lean to the minus 137 on Jones to finish in the top 10.
Yeah, I like that play. I'd probably hedge my top finish with that one. I'd probably put the majority of my money on the top 10 minus 137. In spite of the juice, I do like that play, and then take a sprinkle there. I've got it 16-1. You've got it 17-1. So always, of course, shop your odds. But yeah, okay. So we're kind of in the same boat as far as Eric Jones go. We just we differ a little bit about how much ground he can actually make up.
Well, I had one quick question, though, when I was looking at the props for NASCAR. I understand that some sports books offer win the race, top 3, top 10. I know DraftKings also offers top 5 for the most part. The question that I have for you, do you think there's any value in taking top 3 when you could just pretty much take the money line for a significantly higher price? Because I don't really see the value in taking top 3. Top 10, I think, is more reasonable because of the fact that you're covering a fourth of the field for the most part. So I feel like if you just think he's going to finish in the top 75% or top 75 percentile, then I think top 10 is worth it. Top 3, I feel like you're just better off taking winner at that point. Am I wrong for feeling that way?
I don't think so. Well, obviously, it's going to depend on how the odds break down. If you're getting if you're getting 15-1 to win and 10-1 on top 3, I'm probably going to lean top 3. But if you're not getting a good price, a good enough price to eliminate those other 2 drivers, then yeah, I would think that'd be a kind of a no-brainer, because it is a yeah. I mean, I see the logic. I see what you're talking about there, because if they're going to be top 3, there's a good chance they're going to be able to win the race. So, can you get an example about how it broke down odds-wise? Do you remember anything, or did you write anything down?
So I'll just give you a brief example here. So top 3 at Darlington, Kyle Busch to be in the top 3 is plus 150.
Okay.
Right? Or Harvick is also plus 150. And yet Harvick on the same site to win is plus 650 to win the entire race. And I mentioned how either Harvick or Busch to win is plus 400, and I really like that play. Both of them to finish, or each of them, I should say, to finish in the top 3 is plus 150 each. So why would you take plus 150 on both, for example, to finish top 3 when you could get both of them to win the race at plus 400?
Yeah, I think that's solid logic. I think there's probably a 30-35% chance that one of those 2 guys win the race.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you are going to put money on both of them to finish in the top 3, then you're pretty much making the argument that if they both end up – so if you end up winning both straight bets on top 3, you indirectly have a 66% chance of winning the outright, because they both have finished in the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's solid.
I just don't see the point in taking top 3 bets, but that's just me.
No, certainly not in that case. I like that very much. Okay, so we talked a little bit, little Eric Jones there. What else you got? You got any any flyers there that you like?
To win the overall race, no. There is one matchup prop that I do love that I think possesses a lot of value, and I can get into that, but I'll let you throw out any flyers if you want it. I mean, Keselowski looks potentially entertaining because he's starting out at the pole position. Then again, with all the different stages nowadays, with all the random rules that NASCAR has changed over the course of the years, I don't think the pole position is necessarily as valuable as it used to be. Hot take here, because you have about, 3-4 stages nowadays, so the pole isn't as important as it used to be. But if you wanted experienced drivers who actually have a Cup championship under their belt, Keselowski is definitely an option, and you're getting a guy who is starting in first. Has he had much success so far during the course of this season? Not to the same degree as Harvick or Busch, but he has had experience on this track because he's been racing for a long period of time, and he also does have a Cup championship. So he is pretty solid on almost all tracks. So if you wanted to lean Keselowski, you could. I personally wouldn't, but that definitely is an option if you wanted to look in that direction.
Well, Scott, I'm going to take a look at a racer that's sitting on the pole by the name of Brad Keselowski.
Okay. I heard of him. He's pretty good.
I've got win odds on him at 12-1. I like him as far as a flyer. Yeah, they do break it into stages, but I do like the advantage of sitting on the pole to start the race off. I think that certainly in a race like this where position matters.
So we're both on the exact same page here. The most.
Yeah, I like him at +12, and I've got him in a couple matchups that I like as well. I've got him over Martin Truex, and he's actually the underdog there against Martin Truex, -105. Now, Martin Truex is one of those Joe Gibbs racers that we talked about earlier. He did win this race back in 2016 when he was with Furniture Row Racing, which was a Joe Gibbs affiliate. They weren't actually part of the Joe Gibbs team. And he has finished 11th or better in 4 of the last 5 races. However, Keselowski is really a master of this track. He has run this race 6 times in the Penske Ford after they switched over from Dodge, and he has 5 top 6 finishes in those 6 races. So I really like Keselowski against Martin Truex, getting a nice price there, -105, as Martin Truex was -125. And then I also like him a lot over Chase Elliott, over Awesome Bill from Dawsonville, Bill Elliott's kid driving his dad's number 9 car. Brad Keselowski there is even money, +100. Chase Elliott has 5 Darlington starts, just 1 top 10. Of all my bets on the board, all my matchup bets on the board, I probably like that one the best. Give me Brad Keselowski over Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott starts 11th, by the way.
And what did you say that price was? For
+100 on Brad.
That's definitely a smart play there based on the track records of both drivers. Then again, though, the Truex one's a perfect example, which proves my point of why the pole is not as important as it used to be. You're telling me the person starting in 15th is favored over the person starting first?
Yep.
I don't know about you, but that sounds a little bit detrimental to the purpose of racing. If you, a little bit.
Speaking of minnow ponds, somebody get a hook through that minnow. That's
what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I'm sure that sportsbooks have their reasons for doing that, and I'm sure NASCAR had some reasons for adding stages. I personally have still yet to see it because I think that you should have just kept it the way it used to be. It was so simple and it was pretty much perfect. Pole position gets points. You lead a lap, you get points. You lead the most laps, you get points. And if you win the race, you get more points. It's crazy. I know they added 7 different stages, and I'm supposed to pretend I actually agree with the idea of breaking a race into 7 parts. But that's kind of the issue I have now is I don't want to say what's the point of winning the pole, but it doesn't really mean as much as it used to be. So you used to have it on a separate day where you get to brag saying this guy won the pole. He's in a great spot. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
And you'd have guys.
Am I in a minority for feeling that way or no?
No, and you would have guys who would actually set up their cars for qualifying.
Yeah,
knowing that they were going to
some of them illegally, but that's a separate story.
Well, right, but they, some of the newer racers, that'd be their claim to fame. They knew they weren't going to be competitive for the race, but they could set those cars up to run 1 lap. And a lot of guys that would kind of started their career, so to speak, by grabbing a pole, and that is not the case anymore. They pretty much run these qualifying races, qualifying days the same way they run the race itself, which is a little bit different. And you're absolutely right. So I guess what you're trying to say is that the bookmakers who have entire divisions of people who are assigned to risk management and taking a look at these sports, setting the odds perhaps had an advantage over you and I, who basically capped this race last night, starting at about 9 p.m.?
Yes, that is a hot take. But what I'm mainly saying is just a point of reference for the new NASCAR bettors at home who might just be throwing money on races because there's nothing else to bet on a Sunday afternoon anymore. What I'm trying to say is just because the pole used to mean something in the past doesn't mean that it has the same value that it once had. Now,
Yes.
having said that, we both recommended Keselowski on a flyer, so we kind of just contradicted what we just said. But I'm trying to just say in general, don't immediately look at where these people are starting and think to yourself, oh, this is an absolute steal. I don't know how I don't take this. The odds makers think of everything. You're not in the middle of pulling a fast one. That's all.
It'll be curious to see if that top 15 stat holds true, because you're looking at like I said, you're talking about 16 of over or 6 of over 100 races. Less than 5% have been won outside that 15 spot. So we'll see if that makes a difference with breaking it into stages, and how that all works. So that was my Keselowski was kind of my big value play there. Of all my plays, I probably like him over Elliott the best. I've got one more, but I'll let you go ahead and talk about what you've got there, buddy.
So for this one, I'm actually going to be taking a bit of a flyer here, just based on the plus price that you can get. I'm going to be very honest, though. This racer has not done pretty much anything during the course of this season, and he definitely used to be a lot better of a racer than he is now. But based on value, I'm actually going to be looking at Matt Kenseth to finish ahead of Will Byron at plus 120 on DraftKings. I like the plus price there. In addition to Kenseth starting 12th, while Byron is starting 18th, so you are getting a 6-position head start there. Byron kind of climbed up the ranks in the digital racing scene because he was winning almost every race in the virtual NASCAR that they've been doing over the past month. In terms of actual racing, with him being in a real-life car, he hasn't actually been that great as a racer. And I feel like just because he has been successful over the last couple of weeks, I just think it's a completely different dynamic than virtually going 120 miles an hour to actually going 120 miles an hour. And Kenseth, even though he hasn't been great in recent years, he still has had a lot of experience on this track. Byron is still a relative newcomer. And I think at a plus price, you're getting the experienced guy with the position head start, and he, just has a ton of experience on the track. So for that reason, plus price, I don't like it as much as your Keselowski over Chase Elliott prop. But at the end of the day, I think there is some value at a plus price on Matt Kenseth going with the veteran there.
Yeah, I don't hate that a lot. Kenseth leads the pack. He has the most starts at Darlington of any race car driver with 25. He has had some success there.
Not lately, though. If I'm being honest, he's not been that great lately on the track. But since he's been there before, I mean, you're getting experience with an underdog. And if you look at Byron and his stats when it's in an actual car and it's not in his living room in a simulation, he really hasn't been that great. So he's had one top 10 finish. So far, he ranks 19th in points. It's not like you're going up against a real superstar. And I feel like bookmakers might be pricing in some of his virtual results and hoping it translates. And I feel like that's a complete fallacy. You can't compare somebody driving a simulation in his living room to somebody driving in an actual car going around a unique track that you might not have full amount of experience with. It's the equivalent of just driving around in a simulation at home and like a NASCAR game and then claiming, oh, you know what I should do? I should run the Daytona. It's not exactly the same thing. So I feel like odds makers might have overvalued his success in the digital racing circuit, and I think that is why this price seems to be a little bit too heavy on Byron here. So I'm going to lean to Kenseth for value.
I like that. This is a track like no other. We touched on it a little bit. It is absolutely imperative to have experience at this track. Young drivers very rarely do well just starting out there. It's not, it's not a short track. It's not a half mile. It's not a 0.6 mile little Saturday night short track like like your Bristol would be. It's not a mile and a half speedway like your Kansas, your Chicago, even Atlanta and Charlotte to a lesser extent. It's definitely a hybrid, and with that weird turn 4 with a minnow pond turn 4, it's a little bit of a tricky thing, and it's definitely, there is no substitute for experience at this track, including sitting in your living room playing a virtual racing game.
Yeah,
I like that play, Scott. I really do. I like the experience of Matt Kenseth over the up-and-comer Lord William Byron.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I'm going to be honest, though. Kenseth, as I said before, I'm kind of underselling how bad he's been lately. He really has not had many great results. But I think if you are looking at Byron, who, historically speaking, hasn't had much experience on this track, and if you also keep in mind, he also crashed at Daytona after starting 4th. I know it's a different track, and he finished in 40th. So he's not exactly always the safest racer out there due to the lack of experience. There is a chance that Kenseth could come in 25th, and Byron can still crash and finish in 38th. So it's not. You might not even have to sweat it, because Byron has the chance. I mean, you can argue any racer does of crashing early, but the lack of experience on this track, as you said before, could make him a little bit more prone to wipe out earlier in the race. And as long as your racer is ahead, or your racer just survives a couple of crashes here and there, I wouldn't be surprised to see Byron get involved in one of those. So I think you could potentially win by default if Byron ends up getting himself into a sticky situation going around turn 3 or 4.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Kenseth, you said he's off to a slow start, but really, in relation to racing at this track, that means nothing to me. You've got the 2.5 mile at Daytona. You've got that weird 2 mile track out there in California, and then of course the 1.5 in Vegas, and in the weird kind of flat track there.
I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, they're all professionals, or at least most of them have a ton of experience. I feel like it's mostly about feel. Of course, it matters which company you're with and how good the car is, and I'm not saying that doesn't matter. But when it comes to actually picking matchups, I think experience plays a huge factor, because there are so many variables out of your control. But one thing you can control is how well you think a certain driver will hold up on a specific track, because of the amount of experience and just muscle memory that the driver has built up over the years. Yep. And Kenseth, as you said, has the most appearances at Darlington in his career out of all the people there. And you're comparing him to a mid-20-year-old, if that, in Byron, potentially even younger. I got to link to Kenseth there just for value. It's not a max play by any means, but I think there's some value there.
Yeah, that's the thing about matchups, is you're just sorting for that value. A lot of times people will eschew or eliminate matchups because they say, well, my guy, he's not going to win, and that's not the point. It's the old joke, Scott, that you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than you.
Yeah, people are thinking that your guy has to be seriously competitive, and that's not the case. Your case shouldn't be, is he better than everyone else? Your case should have the argument, is this guy, I'll put it delicately, is this guy going to suck less than the guy that I bet against?
Yes.
That's kind of what you're looking at. You shouldn't be viewing it from a positive. You should be viewing it from the negative perspective, saying which one of these racers is most likely to crash, which one of these racers is most likely to finish in the 20s. And I think Byron's more likely to finish in the 20s than Kenseth. So for that reason, that kind of touches upon my logic there.
Yeah, I think Kenseth can just ride around and stay out of trouble and have a top 20 finish, and I'm not sure Byron, at the end of the day, with all the
it's not going to be flashy. You're not going to see both these guys in the top 5, and you're going to be sweating it out, going, I can't believe what's going to happen. Realistically, both of these drivers, if not at least one of these drivers, will probably be a lap behind at some point, and that's okay, because that doesn't matter. As long as Kenseth is ahead of Byron, you win. They could be 30 laps behind. They could crash by lap 30, and you could still win, because Byron crashed by lap 25 and Kenseth crashed in lap 30, and they're both done for the day, and you still win. So
you're right.
You don't have to worry about winning the race.
And you have the rest of your afternoon free. So it's really kind of
you can just kick back at that point.
I'm going to finish up here with kind of what I consider sort of the modern king of Darlington. And that is Denny Hamlin, another one of those Joe Gibbs racers. He's got a pair of wins at Darlington. He has 11 top 10 finishes in just 14 career starts. I like him. I can get him at plus 700 to win the race. He was only on the board for 2 matchups, and of course they were against Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, 2 racers that I probably like a little bit better. So I stayed away from him as far as a matchup perspective goes. But I do like his experience. I do like the success that he's had at this track. Give me Denny Hamlin starting there from the 10th position, and I'll take Denny Hamlin plus 700. Scott,
well, yeah, based on the track record, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, it is worth mentioning to kind of touch upon or to revisit my thoughts on the top 3 versus the race winner. Hamlin to finish in the top 3 is plus 175. Why would you not just take him to win the race at plus 550? You could potentially even live hedge that for better odds.
Now, see there, I don't hate that as much.
It's not
because
awful, but I feel like if you think he's going to finish top 3, you're getting an extra $3 and change. I feel like that's worth it.
I worry about Busch and Kevin Harvick.
I agree, but I'm saying you could probably look at a live line and potentially hedge that mid-race instead of just settling for worse odds there. I just think you're cutting yourself tremendously short in terms of value if you're losing about $4 and one of them has him coming in 3rd, the other one has him coming in 1st, and the difference there in value is about $4. I just don't think that's worth it.
Yeah, fair enough. What else you got? You got anything else?
For the most part, no. Sorry to spoil it, but for the most part, no. I feel like we covered pretty much everyone I wanted to. One thing I have noticed in NASCAR within the last year or so with all the stages, you tend to see a lot of repetitive names getting listed on the podium. A lot of the same guys over and over again finishing in the top 3, top 5, give or take. It's not as much of a crapshoot as it used to be. And some of that has to do with the stages that have presented themselves in a mainstream way into the circuit, which I still disagree with as a concept, but they're still around. So
it's kind of like the designated hitter. It takes away a lot of the decision-making on the part of the crew chiefs. You have to worry about the tires and things like that, where with the stages, with the built-in pit stops, you don't have to worry as much about strategy. As
I used to love seeing people risk it with low gas tanks and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I thought that was definitely one of the most exciting parts of, race days back in the day. But either or, whether or not you like the stages or if you don't, most people probably don't, they're here to stay. So just get used to it. And from that perspective, I think you'd agree it's been basically the same people at the top of almost every race. Harvick in particular has dominated over the past year. Kyle Busch as well. A lot of similar names always in the top 3. So you might be wondering, well, what if I want to take a serious long shot on just looking at names that I recognize? It could be anybody. Let's just say that you wanted to take Ty Dillon at plus 12,500 because screw it. I'm going to watch it. I'm rooting for an underdog. Let's see what happens. I think the stages basically take away any type of value on any underdog because they're going to do well through multiple stages instead of just having one good run late.
Yeah, it's much likely to have your favorite get caught in the pits when there's a wreck, and that's kind of ends his day right away. Mm-hmm. This is not the place to put your Joey Gase bet on. I think that's the point you're making. I think it's a very good one. There are some tracks where it's a much more likely if you wanted to take a flyer. This is not one of those tracks. And like you're saying, the super speedways are really where you want to take a flyer there.
Talladega can have a crash that takes out half the field. So there is a chance that as long as you get through that race unscathed, there's a decent chance you'll be in the running.
Yeah, absolutely. And they still they still get off sequence as far as fuel goes. So you could have, the guy that's leading for 2 laps there as everybody else pits and have the big one happen then and have him be in an advantageous position. So, I would highly advise if you're going to take a flyer, take it on a super speedway. Yeah,
so from that perspective, just to wrap up what we basically just said, try to stick towards the favorites for the most part. I think that based on the value, Eric Jones is probably the best long shot you'll find at 17-1 just because he won the race last year. So you know that he has a lot of experience on the track. But once again, starting at the I forgot what was his position, 20th, I believe.
He's starting 20th, yeah.
Yeah, so starting 20th definitely is not advantageous, but 17-1, I feel like is probably the longest shot you should be taking in this race. If you're looking at anything 3,000, 5,000 or higher, maybe if you want to throw in $10, just make a joke of the afternoon, then I think you can. But for the most part, you're indirectly lighting your money on fire. Is that safe to say?
Just send us your money. Just
is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think for the most part, if you want to take a $20 shot on John Hunter Nemechek, just send it to us. Just send it to us, Cara Winners and Winers. Scott and I will put that $20 to good use. I promise.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I mean, I can't really argue with free money.
We'll set up a GoFundus.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it. I think you and I were on the same page on a lot of these racers. It kind of goes to the fact that we do have a little bit of knowledge as far as NASCAR goes.
Yeah. Well, the question: am I wrong though when I said that most of the podiums tend to be the same 3 to 5 guys? That's what I've noticed when I've looked at the results.
The same names up there, buddy. A lot of Harvick, a lot of Busch.
It's boring, if I'm being honest, but that's what the stages do. All the experienced drivers are going to destroy all the younger drivers. And NASCAR is kind of in the middle of a transition period where you have a couple of experienced guys and a lot of younger guys. And the experienced guys who have been on the tracks for decades are going to pretty much destroy everybody. And that's what
they took a look at their ratings. They take a look at their TV ratings. They're down. They always try to do something different. They started with the playoffs.
They got to get rid of the stages. If I'm being honest, I think it completely ruins all momentum you have in any race.
I agree. It takes away a lot of the variables as far as the pit stops and strategy and all that goes. 2 tires, 4 tires, all that. I totally agree. Get rid of the pit stops. Get rid of the stages. Absolutely. So, All right, man. Well, there you go. I'll be watching the race. You gonna watch the race?
I might. I might be entering a poker tournament here or there. I might leave it on the background. We'll see. I mean, I can't really say there's many alternatives to talk about. I know I plan on watching the finale for The Last Dance on Sunday night, so that's going to be what I'm up to on Sunday night. But in terms of Sunday afternoon, you got any ideas? Because I don't really see much on the sports calendar.
No, I'll probably play the cheap poker tournament like the one last night. They got the other 220 tournament there tonight. Which I don't know what that ended up after all the rebuys and everything. What did first place end up being? Because I know they listed it at like $850.
It was a couple hundred, I believe.
What?
I'm pretty sure first place was like $450 yesterday.
Dude, I swear I saw like $857.
I thought it was $450, but I don't know.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. So yeah, it will be another exciting weekend on the books. Hey, we're off tomorrow.
But before we talk about our off day, there is UFC tonight. There have been some changes to the card after we went through the breakdown. I ended up writing 2 articles on Winners and Winers, which I mentioned before. If you wanted my plays, a couple of the matchups aren't necessarily there anymore. We were talking about trying to remember his name, Beast Boy, Mike Davis. That sound familiar? I believe that was
vaguely.
Yeah, he dropped. He's not there anymore, so they replaced him with somebody else. And there are some rumors that Sung Yadong, the guy who I said could potentially be a champion in the future because he's only 22.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, he had some visa issues, so he might not necessarily be able to fight. Still up in the air. They ended up bringing a 150-year-old Uriah Faber out to potentially be an alternate, so he might be fighting instead. So shop accordingly and keep that in mind. But the fight card that we prepared, the main fights are still intact. So you don't have to worry about all the main cards. I was really looking forward to seeing Yadong fight, though, so I hope he is able to overcome those visa issues. I think that would be a very good fight. But just keep in mind, some things change. And especially in these certain circumstances where people from other countries might not be able to actually fly in for the fights.
Is it the China ban?
I don't necessarily know because I can't guarantee you where Yadong was training. So I'm not necessarily sure if he was training in China or if he was just somewhere in the States and not somewhere in the States, but somewhere else internationally and couldn't get a visa. But I don't know. So even though a decent portion of the recap we did on this channel and on my articles as well on the site are still accurate, there have been a couple of tweaks to some of the matchups. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, very good. Good heads up. Good update there, buddy. All right, so yeah, I forgot about UFC tonight. So yeah, we're watching a little UFC.
It's on regular ESPN, so you don't have to worry about trying to work ESPN Plus. So you have
Beautiful. All right, man. Well, Scotty, have a good weekend. This has been a lot of fun doing a little, talking a little NASCAR, a little UFC. You know what, folks? We got sports. It's not. Is it what we were used to this time of year? We should be finishing up the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball. No, it's not. But
I want the draft lottery.
What's that?
I wanted the draft lottery. No, in reality, I prefer to see the playoffs. But, the draft lottery, what's more fun than seeing the commissioner spin pretty much a lottery wheel of ping pong balls for the sake of who's going to save our franchise? And it all comes down to 3 ping pong balls.
He's basically the world's most overpaid bingo caller.
And they don't even do it on stage anymore. They do it off stage now. Everything's already prepared. I would have loved to have seen it kind of like the local lottery winners on the commercials where you just speak, and the first number up is the Hornets. The second number up is the Bulls. The third number is the Knicks. Like, they just go through the whole list like an old lottery winner, listing everything.
They put them in the little slots.
Yes, and you just see it shoot up, and they just go, yeah, the first number is 6. The second number is 2. Once again, the numbers are 6, 2, 3, 5. Like, I wish they did that with teams. I think that would be hilarious. I would love to see that live.
B9.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Yes.
I think that would be hilarious. But
perhaps not everybody would get it.
You know what I'm talking. If you're on the East Coast, you know exactly what I'm talking about with the local lottery winner announcements.
Oh yeah, the pick 3, the pick 4, and all that.
They sound so peppy when they say it. Like, they're thrilled that the third number was a 7. And
good luck, everybody.
Yeah. And yep, I think that would be really funny if they would do that in regular TV, as all these older men are praying to the ping pong gods to get their ping pong ball selected. I think that would be.
You've got some connections. See if you can get that taken care of.
You don't think that would improve ratings? I think that would be hilarious.
Of course it would.
But that's just me. Now, in reality, we definitely have missed out on a lot of good opportunities in sports.
Just ask us. We can fix NASCAR. We can fix the NBA draft lottery.
Well, the way I would fix NASCAR is to just go back to the rules roughly 10 years ago, and I feel like you're kind of set. And the second thing, try to keep the same name for the championship for more than 3 years at a time.
I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
I have to say that because they've changed that name so many times. I don't even know what it's called anymore.
Well, and then they have the second series, which used to be the Busch series, which I think most people still call it the Busch series because they don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're running. So I think we agree the way to fix NASCAR is to stop fixing NASCAR.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, bud. Well, have a good weekend. We appreciate it. We appreciate all you people stopping by to join us today for Today in Sports Betting. As always, don't forget to check out all of our great content over there at winnersandwhiners.com. Keep an eye on the UFC card for tonight as there could be more changes coming. And, he is Scott Reichel. I am Scott Steen. We are part of the great team over at winnersandwhiners.com. Hope all of you are healthy and well. Please, everybody, be careful and stay healthy. Starting to open the country back up, so let's see what happens. We could have a sports here before you know it. All right. So have a great weekend. Enjoy your time off, and we'll be back and taking a look at some NFL props on Monday. We'll be breaking down the odds to make the playoffs for the NFC and the AFC on Monday and Tuesday. All right. Until then, you guys take care, be well, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.